Hi, since I have like several episodes already recorded, but because I didn't do a lot of preparation for them and just kind of did them off the cuff, it takes time for me to edit them. So I'm going back to the old format of just uploading straight to YouTube. Um, and but I am preparing. I have prepared a little bit more in advance for this episode of film recommendations because it's just a whole lot easier for you and for me if I can just get an episode out there for those of you who are watching this. So anyway, uh, I want to say real quick about this series that this I've said in the past is not done for you, the viewer, as much as for me, uh, the maker, to kind of just do in my spare time for fun. But uh, I do want to say that I do watch other people's film critique shows, and such as the Harry S. Plinkett series done by Red Letter Media, and uh, the Nostalgia Critic, which both of which are done more for entertainment purposes, whereas mine is done as a bit more of a straight show. I occasionally make a little bit of a joke or a poke at the filmmakers if it's a particularly badly done film, but uh, you know, it's never just about recommending it. My show is more about recommending a film and why it's good and analyzing it a little bit, as opposed to, maybe nitpicking over this, that, and the other, and looking a bit more at the storytelling, the filmmaking process, the writing process, some of the more subtle messages and meanings, and perhaps things that they left out or put in uh, that were that if they left it out would have been better because it was necessary, or if they put it in were unnecessary. Um, anyway, I do recommend the Nostalgia Critic series of critiques. I've been watching them a lot lately because they're a lot of fun. Uh, but that's what you get when you have people who have the ability to edit film together a little bit better than I can. I'm not a whiz at this. Um, but also uh, can take clips from the movie. I don't do that because uh, there are some copyright issues with that. And then just on top of that, it takes a lot of time to do that. These people usually like the Red Letter Media uh, and the Nostalgia Critic, they have people working on it so much so that that the Nostalgia Critic actually gives credits at the end of his reviews. Uh, it's just me when I'm reviewing a film, which is why the film recommendation series doesn't have as many episodes, and also why I don't just do one film in a series in an episode a lot of the time. Uh, you will see a lot of films or TV shows recommended in this series. So in that light, I think that um, while it's not as much for entertainment purposes and it's not as light-hearted fare, it is more of a discussion of why a film might be good or bad. That being said, I've had a long-standing love-hate relationship with Sandra Bullock's films ever since I saw her in Love Potion number 9 as the character Diane Farrow. Um, that film, of course, came out in 1992. After that, I saw her in Speed, Demolition Man. I'm looking over her filmography here. Um, I saw like parts of the net. I saw the previews for While You Were Sleeping. Um, and in terms of Speed, Demolition Man was cheesy, but I kind of liked it as a cheesy film. Um, and I liked Love Potion number 9. I liked Hope Floats. I liked 28 Days. I didn't hate Practical Magic, but it wasn't my favorite film. Uh, I forget if I saw Forces of Nature. Um, I I liked Miss Congeniality, and I was indifferent on Miss Congeniality too. I don't think I really watched it, very much of it anyway. Um, I thought The Proposal was okay, um, but it was kind of a formulaic uh, kind of film in terms of a romantic comedy. And at this point, she's like 40. She's in her 40s. She was born in the 60s, so um, she really can't be doing the romantic comedy roles forever, playing the 30 something, whereas before she was playing the 20 something, and she can't be doing that forever. It's not right. So anyway, um, and I liked The Blind Side, but not really for her because um, I do not like Sandra Bullock's acting. I do not like the way she plays her roles, but I do like the films she chooses to be in. So I just thought it's a weird thing because normally I really like good films and I really like good actors, and I like films with her in it, but I don't like her as an actress, which is weird. That being said, I just watched All About Steve, and I made a good page and a half of notes here, and I just thought I would share. So anyway, this film came out in 2009 and was quickly forgotten in movie theaters. It was one of those, um, it doesn't matter what kind of romantic comedy we put out or what kind of story we put out, it's just there. Uh, so it was released in 2009 by 20th Century Fox, and the title character, Steve, is the object of her affection, uh, where she she kind of follows him around and is obsessed with him. And he's played by Bradley Cooper, who I'm just looking over here, and there's a reason why I've never heard of this guy. Is because he's been in all these movies that I have really never been tempted to see. Um, Wet Hot American Summer, didn't see it. Stella Shorts, which I guess is Stella, the comedy group, uh, which has like Michael Ian Black and a couple other guys in it. Anyway, he was in The Wedding Crashers, Failure to Launch, The Comebacks, The Rocker, Yes Man. He's just not that into you, which I did see, but I don't remember him being in it. I do not remember what or who he was in that film, unfortunately. Uh, maybe he was a maybe he was a boyfriend or something. He was in The Hangover and The Hangover Part 2, neither of which I saw. He was in the A Team as Faceman, and I did see the A Team, but I don't remember him. Uh, he played Faceman, who was Face, played by Dirk Benedict in the television show, but I just don't remember it. So I'm just looking here. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's who I thought it was. I'm just looking at the uh, plot description for He's Just Not That Into You. He plays the bastard husband of Jennifer Connelly, who then goes to a yoga class and gets interested in Scarlett Johansson, uh, and aspiring singer, yada yada. So anyway, yeah, I mean, admittedly, it's hard to resist Scarlett Johansson. She's really gorgeous and has a fantastic body and apparently a pretty nice personality. But passing up passing up Jennifer Connelly for Scarlett Johansson, that's a tough call because I also love Jennifer Connelly. So I don't think that's really a fair thing. Um, anyway, so that's why I don't remember. It's because I didn't like his character at all from the beginning. I didn't sympathize at all. And normally I can find a way to sympathize with a lot of characters in films. I can try and figure out their motivation. And in this case, uh, you know, the guy smokes and lies to his wife about it and cheats on her and lies to her about it and is just the worst. Then again, I don't really like Scarlett Johansson's character either. Uh, so as a result, I don't really remember her face until I really, really think about it. Uh, just because I don't remember faces of people I don't like very well in films. So anyway, yeah, I couldn't stand her character because she had this wonderful guy friend who was sweet and charming and was the nice guy, and she was constantly, you know, passing up on him so that she could go and be with some creep, and in this case, a married man. Ugh, it's really infuriating. So anyway, yeah, Bradley Cooper, I don't know him. Uh, okay, he was on an episode of Sex in the City. I'm looking at his television stuff. He was on Nip Tuck, Kitchen Confidential, and apparently he did an episode of Inside the Actors Studio. Why, I don't know. He's mostly been in these really cheesy comedies that, a lot of people like. They're very popular, but, they just don't attract me as a comedy, as a string of comedies. I'm not interested. So it's weird that they would choose this guy, and that may be one of the reasons why I don't like this particular film. So they have some other great actors in this in this film, actors you'll recognize anyway. I don't know how great they are, but Thomas Hayden Church uh, was uh, was in this, and I'm just looking, and the if you look at the films that he was in, he was actually doing some really cool films up until 2007. What happened in 2007 for Thomas Hayden Church? Well, he was in Spider-Man 3, which is a movie I actually like because I like the character motivations, I like the plot points. I think it's a little bit better film of the three, uh, in that things don't work out perfectly, and then things kind of come together in the end, sort of. But you have this downfall for him where he just turns into a jerk, and I like that. It's the Superman 3 kind of element to the story arc where the battle is with the self. That to me is a very interesting kind of plot device, and I was actually excited to see what Sam Raimi was going to do next with the series, but that didn't happen. So what was he in after that? Smart People, which I've never heard of. Imagine That, which was a children's family film starring Eddie Murphy that pretty much tanked. Nobody really wanted to see that. Don McKay as the title character. Then All About Steve. Um, and like the only films he's been in that I would consider larger are We Bought a Zoo as a character in that, and then John Carter, which is John Carter of Mars, which is a very famous sci-fi story that is being made into a feature film. But leading up to that, he was in Idiocracy, Over the Hedge, which was a semi-popular children's film um, as a voice. He was in Sideways, Spanglish, oh, 3,000 Miles to Graceland. He was in both versions of George of the Jungle, which I actually find kind of interesting. That that's kind of weird. And he plays the same character, Lyle Vandergroot. A little bit weird. Um, and yeah, and aside from that, he's had some recurring television roles. The most recent being on the miniseries Broken Trail, which I had heard of him being in and kind of brought him back uh, so that they were willing to put him in larger movies after being in Over the Hedge and Idiocracy. Idiocracy was a film released on cable back back in 2006. It was released on Comedy Central, and it was well made and had some great points to it in terms of being kind of a sci-fi story. But it wasn't great, and I honestly don't remember his part on it. So it was kind of a forgettable apart. And Over the Hedge, although it was somewhat popular and I think it was actually pretty good, um, was forgettable. It was one of those CGI cartoon adaptations of something like a comic strip or an idea that somebody had that they then made into a feature length film, kind of like they did with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and all these other uh, CGI films, Megamind, Despicable Me. You get some comedians or some comedic actors to do voices for different characters, um, and put together a children's story. Another one is Monsters vs. Aliens, which was by DreamWorks. Uh, he wasn't in that, Thomas Hayden Church, but point being that you have these uh, easily forgettable movies, and that's kind of what we've gotten into. That's why the cinema is dying, as I've mentioned in previous videos, is because the films are just recycled schlock, and you're not seeing too much originality. Even in the comedies that you're seeing, like The Hangover and stuff like that, it's basically the same stuff you're seeing everywhere else, unfortunately. So aside from that, so Thomas Hayden Church is in this, uh, and you have some really good actors in this. This film was actually also produced by Sandra Bullock, uh, and she's supposed to be like young and perky and everything, but Sandra Bullock just kind of looks like an older woman playing a much younger woman in this, unfortunately. So she looks a little bit silly, I think. And she wears like weird clothing, like clothing you would see on a teenager, and she's she's always seen in these bright red patent leather go-go style boots that you don't know why she wears them, but she's always wearing them, and they make her look a bit like she's Supergirl and she forgot to change her shoes out of her costume or something. Um, so, I mean, I like the character in some aspects, and in other aspects I don't, and I'll go into that. So, within the first 5 minutes, you get introduced to the character of Mary, who writes crosswords for the Sacramento newspaper. She lives at home with her parents, but but it seems tagged on that they explain it away by saying uh, that her apartment is being fumigated, and so she's just temporarily living at home with her parents. Um, I think that's just kind of the excuse that uh, that they have, and that they didn't want to show a grown woman living at home with her parents because that's considered abnormal in American culture, whereas it's actually considered very normal for an unmarried single person to live at home with their parents. And then when they when they do eventually get married, then uh, it's also very common for the grandparents, uh, if one of them is widowed or something, to move in the with the kid and help out in the family for taking care of the house, taking care of the children, uh, what have you. And more importantly, not being alone, so that you're part of a family. So I think it tries to explain away some characteristics of hers that are in real conflict the with the life that the character wants to lead. And I think that the character of Mary actually has an autism spectrum disorder, possibly Asperger's syndrome. And I've got a few reasons why. First, she dresses strangely, not appropriate to her age or not appropriate to uh, the things that she's going to. So very eccentrically. For example, the red boots, also mismatched clothing, um, sometimes with very loud, bright patterns that don't exactly make a lot of sense. Um, she can quickly reference trivia no matter the moment. For instance, she's being intimate with Steve on their first date, which kind of freaks him out. Like they're in the car for a few seconds, and she uh, doesn't hesitate before kind of launching herself at him and writhing around on him and getting him hot. And then she starts spouting weird trivia about all kinds of things. And at first he's kind of like, okay, I'll go along with this. This is kind of cute. And then she won't shut up. And she goes from being, really hot and steamy to uh, doing what she does earlier in the show, which is monopolize conversations and talk about everything that comes across her mind in terms of random trivia with loose connections. Kind of like what she just listened to in terms of all this film stuff, in terms of all these people. Uh, anyway, so then she's sitting on a bus going to meet Steve somewhere, and she won't shut up. And it's a charter bus, and she actually talks so much that the bus driver fakes a stop so that she can go to the bathroom. And she gets off, and then the bus driver drives away. And the other people in the bus actually applaud this. Seems kind of calloused and cruel, but at least they didn't leave her out in the middle of nowhere. They actually left her at a diner. And then Steve actually refers to her kind of affectionately as a talking encyclopedia. Aside from that, like I said, she monopolizes conversations and has little or no social life. She focuses very intensively on her work of making crossword puzzles, trying to make them in all sorts of different ways, um, and uh, wants to, just make crossword puzzles. She's absolutely obsessed with it. So this leads me to conclude that the character actually has Asperger's syndrome. So also she can't cope with everyday questions at her career day scene at the beginning of the show. Uh, so like they're asking like, that can't really pay very much. How do you pay your rent? How do you buy food? And if it were a somewhat normal person, they might say, well, let's just keep questions about my career. My personal life isn't really that important in terms of why I'm here. You know, everybody's life is different, something along those lines. Just kind of, you know, make it clear to the kid that while it's no big deal, it's also not something that's really appropriate to be talked about at that point if they're gonna do that. And on top of that, she has to like read everything from note cards when she's presenting it in order to keep herself focused and on topic. I don't know. Admittedly, that's what I'm doing for this, but whatever. So anyway, this takes place in Sacramento, which is sort of not a typical place to live in terms of the storytelling. So it's hard for people maybe in the rest of the country to identify with Sacramento. So that's a bit of a flaw in the storytelling. Uh, and that's largely because financially California has a lot more higher it has a lot higher income. You have the West Coast culture. It's warm and sunny there year round. So that's kind of my reasoning. Um, yeah. Anyway, and it's not that different from setting it in LA or San Francisco or other cities in California. So it kind of makes you wonder, well, what is this? On the plus side, it's not always a city that's used in films for storytelling and settings. So I don't know. Anyway, in typical bad movie fashion, as I put it, she decides to read circumstances about the things leading up to her her date with Steve and things immediately after to say that she should follow Steve cross country. Yeah, why not? After all, it sets things in motion. She's literally sitting in the bathtub when she's thinking about that. After having lost her job as the crossword constructor. So she goes all the way uh, to Oklahoma to uh, to catch up with Steve at this event or no, I'm sorry, it's Tucson. Tucson, where there's like a hostage situation at an Old West thing. They basically make up the most absurd um, events that they can to so that it's not like real news events. That way they are kind of staying out of trouble for maybe using real life news events to bring relevance to the story, I guess. I don't know. And that way they can say that all events depicted are fictional and any similarity is coincidental. They like doing that in movies so that they can't have people trying to chip in on the royalties for the story. Oh, the anchor man Steve works with finds her at this thing in Oklahoma where she catches up to them, where a three-legged baby is has been born, and the mother wants to have the third leg cut off, and the father wants to leave the baby as it is and let the child decide what to do when she's an adult, I guess. I don't know. But so yeah, she convinces he convinces her to you know stay with it and continue to follow Steve as a way of pulling a prank on Steve, which there's no real motivation for it. I mean, I understand that they goof around and they like to play with each other, but it just seems a little bit far fetched that somebody would kind of play that game with an innocent woman's affections. I mean, that's really sick when you think about it. So, moving on. Uh, the parents come to a compromise, and so Steve and his news crew, I forgot to mention, Steve is part of a news crew for a fake cable news company. Probably should have mentioned that. Uh, he goes down to Galveston, Texas for a storm report uh, about a hurricane, and Mary and some friends she makes who are in the when she's sort of camping out there with these two encampments, some that are for cutting off the leg, some are for keeping the leg, um, which is what happens when you make every little thing relating to someone's private life a political issue. Uh, anyway, she makes friends there, and uh, they're willing to take her uh, to Galveston to catch up with him because they apparently have nothing better to do. This is what they do. They go from event to event just to be there and be a part of things. I don't know. So, let's see. Uh, when the news crew are talking about shooting footage of the storm damage, they immediately cut non sequitur to some kids running through a forest to a grassy field uh, where the teacher uses sign language to indicate that they are deaf, because otherwise the audience won't immediately recognize that. And across the field is an amusement park. Now, what amusement park are you going to where they don't have a clear path for people to walk through right next to the parking lot? Where are these kids that they are not being tightly reined in and controlled? Because every field trip that I went on, first off, we never went to an amusement park. Uh, it had to be educational in some way. Second, we never ran across a field or through the woods. We just weren't allowed. We were never unsupervised because the school didn't want to get sued. I don't know. This is supposed to be in Colorado. Maybe they play things a little differently in Colorado. I doubt it. Anyway, as they cross the field to get to the amusement park, they get swallowed up in a sinkhole that that is actually a cave-in of an old abandoned mine. Rather convenient, but whatever. Um, so then they cut back later to Steve, who's now wearing a wig. a mustache and sunglasses in order to hide his identity, even though he's still in the same cable news van that he drives around in. So, Mary is going to know that it's him. The sound tech kind of loses it as they go back and forth with their bickering and tells the anchorman, Hartman Hughes, played by Thomas Hayden Church, and Steve, the sound tech guy tells them off, just flat out. Says, what are you guys doing? Mary is not stalking you. Uh, and he tells Hartman that he needs to stop going tanning. Tells Hughes that. Says he looks like an orange or looks like a carrot or something like that. Anyway, Hughes then writes on I guess it's an empty chicken bucket or something uh, about the mine collapse so that she knows where they're going. And uh, it's broadcast that the guy giving her a ride. When I say it's broadcast, I mean it's like right there in their behavior. It is really shouting that the guy giving her a ride all over this place really likes her in more than just a just friends way, and that he really gets her, and she really gets him in a way better than just Steve, even though the guy isn't all that sexy, So I kind of like that. I kind of like that it goes that way. And that's actually DJ Qualls, who you might remember from the film The New Kid and films like that. I'm just going to look at his filmography a little bit, just so we can get more of a sense. Yeah, he was in Big Trouble, Lone Star State of Mind, which also starred Thomas Hayden Church, The New Guy, The Core, uh, Delta Farce, All About Steve, of course, and that kind of thing. Just give you a sense. He was also on Numbers, Monk, My Name Is Earl, Big Bang Theory, all that kind of stuff. So he's been on things. So I kind of find that interesting that he was in a previous thing with Thomas Hayden Church. Aside from that, they broadcast through the behavior and the writing uh, that this character of Howard, played by DJ Qualls, really likes Mary. Even though DJ Qualls is like mid 20s, late 20s in this film, and Sandra Bullock's like in her 40s. So, whatever. If they're happy, fine. But, yeah. Anyway, so she then runs across the field from the friends towards Steve and falls right into the hole. And that kind of ends your act two of the thing. Um, a lot of other strange incidental stuff happens along the way, but it doesn't really matter. The way that the anchorman Hughes or the news reporter Hughes gets a message to Mary is they're passing by where they're out in the desert, driving along the same highway from Oklahoma towards Colorado. Somehow they're on the same highway, even though it's kind of from Texas. They're going. It, Mary was going from Oklahoma to Texas, and they're going from Texas up to Colorado along the same stretch of highway somehow. So I don't know. Must be in New Mexico or something, because that's the only reason I can. But no, that wouldn't make sense if they were going from Oklahoma. So this makes no sense. It's just a movie. It's supposed to be coincidental, but they're kind of insulting your intelligence at this point. So their car, Mary and her friend Howard's car gets trashed in a tornado, and that's why they're kind of standing in the desert when the cable news van passes by. And that's when Hughes tosses the message to her on a chicken bucket. So then they patch what they can up of Howard's car, and They get to the site of the sinkhole with the hearing impaired children uh, trapped in the mine, and she falls in. That's your end of Act 2, start of Act 3. So while in the mine, she finds one of the hearing impaired children that didn't make it out, but is okay, just cold. Uh, and the firemen and police are, I found it was a little bit weird, are worried about carbon monoxide in the mine that would then suffocate them. And they bother to throw down a string of very fragile light bulbs or something. Maybe they tied a rock to it to weigh it down so that it would go down easier, but they didn't bother also throwing down a hose, like an air duct, you know, that could then pump fresh air down to them so that they could breathe, which is not uncommon, not unheard of. You know, you just hook up a fan to it and blow some of the fresh air from the surface down there so that they can breathe. So I found that a little weird. Um, and we're almost done. Hey, all right. So, in a point of exposition, Mary explains that she loves her red boots because they make her toes feel like 10 friends in a tent at summer camp. And that is the kind of explanation you would kind of expect from someone with an autism spectrum disorder, where they wear a specific piece of clothing because it it feels good. They have a certain sensitivity about it. Uh, and she also says after they cut away to the surface and then cut back to her that she felt like Steve was her ticket to normal. Uh, and she kind of kicks herself a bit about how she's different. She knows all this random stuff. She's very smart and intelligent. Um, and Steve is talking on the news about how, oh, she's smart, but not in a bad way. She's smart in a very cool way, kind of thing. She means well. She's a nice person, and it's like, okay, we get it. She has autism. Would you get past it and or just come out with it? You know, it was so weird. Uh, so anyway, she comes up with a oh, important plot point. I was about to skip it. So as she's about to get herself and the child out using a simple counterweight kind of deal where she ties one end of a rope to a mining car that she's gonna let roll down the mine that will then pull her and the kid up using a pulley, um, basically an elevator kind of system. She uh, Thomas Hayden Church's character Hughes jumps in to save her because she wouldn't be there if he hadn't have given her the note and encouraged her to come along. So then he gets trapped. She adds more weight to the car, and uh, they let it loose, and he ends up looking like a hero, so that then he can get his dream job as an anchor, even though he's a jerk. Um, I guess it's because he's reformed as a character now, so he doesn't have to be condemned because he tried to make it right by trying to save her. Maybe that's the writer's reasoning. I don't know. It was written by Kim Barker. Oh, it was written by a woman. That explains why it has all this weird feminine logic, but bothers to at least point out that it's weird feminine logic. So, anyway, and I'm not saying that all feminine logic is weird, but in this case, the reason why she goes and looks for the guy Steve is because she puts it together that all of these things are part of destiny to be with Steve. So anyway, she gets them out of the hole, but she lets Hughes take the credit and then kind of walks off to be with her friends after saying to Steve that it's okay. I don't want to be with you. It was just a thing I got in my head. It was a bad idea. So she reunites with her friends. Hughes gets the anchor position at the cable news network she wanted, and Mary, it's kind of indicated, gets her job back at the Sacramento newspaper making crosswords, and that's kind of where they end it. Uh, and this is honestly um, one Sandra Bullock movie that I really don't like. I don't like the casting. I think it's not very good. I'm not a big fan of Thomas Hayden Church. I think he was good on Wings, as I said in my Spider-Man 3 review. Um, I am glad I watched it, and I wish that they would just come out and say that the character has an autism spectrum disorder of some kind. Um, I I'm just gonna stop ranting about it and read the Wikipedia article here. Production began in '07. Parts of the film were shot at Mayfield Senior School in Pasadena, uh, and the collapsed mine and sinkhole were filmed at Walt Disney Company's Golden Oak Ranch, which in California, which explains exactly why it looks nothing like Colorado when I went there. I went to Colorado once. Uh, it was originally scheduled for release in March, but didn't, which is of course springtime, but did not see release until September, which is more late summer, early fall, hence death time for films. Critical reaction, it was overwhelmingly negative. It is in the 96th of the 100 worst reviewed films of the 2000s, with a rating of 6% based on 126 reviews. So I am not alone in not liking this. It opened at number 3 behind the previous 2 weeks' number 1 openers, The Final Destination and Inglorious Bastards. It grossed 33.8 million domestically, making a profit at the box office. So at least it wound up in the black. It was nominated for 5 Golden Raspberry Awards, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, Phil Trail, Worst Actress, Sandra Bullock. That is not her first nomination. Worst Screenplay by Kim Barker. I have to give her that. And Worst Screen Couple, Sandra Bullock and Bradley Cooper, which I have to give it. It ultimately won Worst Actress and Worst Screen Couple, which I'm a little bit glad for. Giving out a copy of All About giving out a copy of All About Steve to each member of the audience, promising to attend next year if they all watched to consider if it was truly the worst performance. Um, Sandra Bullock actually accepted the Razzie for Worst Actress, so I gotta give her credit. She at least accepted it. Only Halle Berry has accepted Worst Anything Award Razzie for Catwoman, so I give her credit for that. So anyway, that's it for this episode of Film Recommendations for All About Steve. Do not see it unless you just want to see a bad movie that they tried their best to make well. Bye bye.